Good evening, Facebook friends. This is Dr. Jen Kordonsky at Optimal Spine Chiropractic. And this evening's class is Your Spine, a User's Guide. And it would be great if we were handed a user's guide, just like for all of our appliances. We can troubleshoot, we know what to expect and how to take proper care of our spines, or excuse me, of our appliances, because we get a user's guide, right? I know not a lot of people take the trouble to read them, but there is a reference, right? And something as important as your spine, a part of your body that houses the spinal cord, is your connection between your brain and your body. It's really a key part of your body, and you get more instructions on how to take care of your teeth, how to take care of your skin, how to take care of your hair than you ever get for how to take care of your spine. And it really is crucial. There's key things about the way the spine develops that we are not taught. There's key things about the way we use our bodies on a regular basis. So I'm going to go through and just kind of give you an overview. First, of development. So I know that those of you who are watching, are not babies and not toddlers anymore, but it's important that we have this frame of reference for how our spines should have been cared for. Number one, there may be children in your life, and you can pass on the information and help the future generations. And number two, it can kind of help you understand where the subluxations, where the problems that you're dealing with today may have originated from, because many times we don't realize that the way our spines were used and cared for from an early age was not ideal and created some potentially lifelong problems. So first of all, when we are developing in utero, our body is forming in the space that is available in our mother's body. So if mom's body is out of alignment, we might be kind of cramped in there. If mom's body is really out of alignment, sometimes babies end up in the breech or vertex position, not ideal. Or even if there's just a slight misalignment and that uterus is just it's called inuterine constraint when the pelvis is out of alignment. That little bit of tension can create a torque in the baby's head position through the birth process instead of coming through exactly chin tucked or crown first. And that's a very safe way to be born. All the vertebrae stack up together and are protected. If we don't have that perfect alignment, that perfect positioning, then sometimes we can get, just from the forces of going through the birth canal and the forces of the uterus contractions, can create subluxations in a newborn spine. So sometimes people are completely floored when they find out that we take care of babies. But babies very often have subluxations just from the stress of the birth process. If you were born via cesarean, that's a different kind of stress. It's no less stressful. There's still forces pulling, pushing, etc. So just being aware of that. Secondly is in the early phases of a newborn's life, when their muscles are not supporting their head and their neck well, some little things to watch out for. Babies tend to, fall asleep and their head flops to the side, or they get into a comfy position and they're just slumped over. Imagine how you would feel if you fell asleep and your head was, flopped all the way to the side for an extended period of time. Not so good. Now, babies are much more pliable. They're probably not going to get stiff like you would, but repeatedly that can cause the C1 especially to come out of alignment. Having the baby's head turn towards where they're feeding. If we are breastfeeding, then we're going to want to make sure that we turn the baby to our body rather than let the baby turn their head. And if we're bottle feeding, same thing, but ideally switching sides so that it's more symmetrical. One thing that I know happened to me as a child, because I've seen the pictures of me hanging in one of those little jumper seats, the little Johnny jumpers that used to hang from the door frame, is there was too much pressure on my spine from an early age before it was ready. Because what's really amazing about the way the human body develops is that as you learn to hold your head up, that's when you develop the curve of your neck. And then you learn to push yourself up when you're on your belly, and you start to develop the curve of the lower back, and then you start crawling, and that forms the lumbar curve. And once we have that curve in our neck, curve in our lower back, then we are ready for gravity's forces. Before we have that, if we are in an upright position, we do not have the curves or the shock absorbers to protect the spine ideally. So all of the equipment that we have, the jumpers I don't think are so popular anymore, but the exercisers and the walkers and even the baby carriers that moms and dads wear, if they're hanging the baby from its pelvis, then it's putting force on the spine before it's really ready. And it may not be a big deal in short intervals, but if it's something that happens a lot, then it could create problems later on. So that's something we want to avoid. Learning to walk, we want to be barefoot or in soft-soled shoes as much as possible. Until they don't make them in the child size anymore, you want soft-soled shoes. So those of us who are adults now, that is definitely not what was happening. The thinking was the more firm the support, the better it was for our feet. But then we don't develop the arches ideally. And if we don't have good, strong, healthy alignment of the foot arches, then that will affect the whole body's alignment. So you can start to realize not even just the falls and sports injuries and car accidents and things that you've experienced in your life, but just early childhood development could potentially be part of why the subluxations you have now need the work that they do to correct. So ideally, we would help the curves form properly in a child's spine. And we would check for small problems as they're growing, because of course, learning to walk, you fall down, learn to ride a bicycle, you fall down. So if we just had these checkups throughout life to keep our healthy spines healthy and prevent the accumulation of stress, then great. But most of us did not have that, right? So when we get to be adults, now we have this spine, we still are not given instructions on how to properly brush and floss it every day. So you've probably heard me talk about posture. If you have not, then go look at the welcome videos. I think it's welcome video number 2 is a quick synopsis of posture. I bring it up in a lot of classes, so I'm not going to go over it extensively. But that is a number 1 for how do I, now as an adult, take care of this spine that I have? Posture, posture, posture. Almost everything that we do is designed to pull us out of that good alignment, flex us forward, have us looking down, hunching forward. So be conscientious of that. And then the next key is movement. Our spinal joints need movement constantly. Just thinking about the disc between the vertebra is that disc. That needs to be pressed and released by the normal motion of the spine in order to properly absorb fluid and stay hydrated. If our spinal joints are stuck, we have a subluxation, then that disc does not get squeezed and released when we move our bodies. It'll stay stagnant and it will start to deteriorate over the years. Or if we just happen to not move enough because we are tied to our desk doing our job, or whatever it is, we just happen to not be moving all throughout the day constantly, then we might be contributing to the deterioration of our discs and our spinal joints. And we can end up with, a mess like this where that disc is really thin compared to what it should be. So movement is critical. That's why adjustments regular keep the spinal joints moving, and then you should be moving your body in various ways all through the day. So make excuses, find ways to do the stretches that we give you through the day, get up and move around. Movement is really so simple, not expensive, doesn't take a lot of time, yet will really help your body to keep the spine healthy. We give you particular stretches and exercises. Those are really wonderful to break up the day. But ultimately, all of life's stresses, physical, chemical, emotional, are influencing us and are being perceived and dealt with through the nerve system. So the spine is going to take the brunt of that, just coping with and compensating for all of life's stresses. We're going to need to care for our spines pretty regularly, looking at the type of stress that we're dealing with, trying to identify, oh, this is something that I can change, will be helpful. But ultimately, it's just consistent and regular care. If we haven't given you stretches yet, please make sure that you ask us for things in particular that you should be doing. If we've given them to you and you've really forgotten and gotten off track with it, just ask. I'd rather you be honest and say, oh, I haven't really done that. And we'll get you back onto what you should be doing. But it's little things over time that if we're consistent with, we get the biggest payoff. And every little bit that you give to the health of your spine is going to be influential in your health, your well-being in so many ways, because this is your central nerve system. So that's just a quick little overview. There are some things that I want to touch on that are just big, potholes pitfalls, where people tend to hurt themselves without even thinking about it. You'll hear me say it thousands and thousands of times, but I can't say it enough because every single day in the office, someone still does it in front of me. But looking at our phone and dropping our chin to our chest puts a ton of stress on the spine. We have to watch out for that. We have to make sure that our computer monitors are high enough that we are not bringing our head forward and down to be at eye level with our screen. That's a big no-no. When we sit, there has to be a little bit of a curve in the lower back. Watch out for sitting like this. Bending to pick things up is a potential landmine for people. And so often I'll have someone sit up after their adjustment and then they reach down or reach back and do this bendy, twisty thing to go get their purse or their shoes or whatever it is. Because we don't really think much about it. But if people are doing that in front of their chiropractor immediately after their adjustment, you know that most of us are bending and reaching for things in unhealthy ways. Think about the alignment of your spine. When you are bending, we should be bending from the hips and keeping that little curve in the lower back, not hunching forward and bending down by flexing our waist or our lower back. Try to avoid, other than in a stretch where we're doing a nice spinal twist in yoga, avoid twisting movements of the spine. So bending and leaning down like this repeatedly. Think about bending down and putting things in the dryer, for example. That half bent twisting motion is very stressful for the spine. Same thing with vacuuming, that kind of little bit of a bend incorrectly and a twisting motion really stresses the spine. So those are big things. Lifting, obviously we want to not use our back. You've heard that before, but that means you're using your legs. You're keeping that little curve in your lower back, squatting down to lift something up. You'll think about it if it's something heavy, probably, but you're probably not paying attention when it's the grocery bags or, just the laundry basket. But every time, it's not something that you should just do when it's heavy. So those are the landmines. I want you to think about how you're using your body. Think about how often you are taking care of it. How often you get adjusted should really match up with how much stress is in your life, whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional. So that's a little bit of a user's guide for those of you with a spine. And I'm so happy that I see people here live. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I know that the little bits and pieces that you put in to caring for yourself are going to make a big difference. So thank you for being active participants in your care, and I hope to see you all soon. Have a great night.